Ladies and gentlemen, what's up? This is BC. Welcome back to another episode of Supreme Being, the podcast. I have a very special episode for you today. A couple of quick announcements: a rebirth of the Titans, which is another event that I'm doing. It's on my website. Make sure you sign up for the 28th and the 29th of January. January 31st to February 4th, I'm doing another 5-day cold calling challenge. You can reach out to me for that link on Instagram or my new Facebook. Remember, my old Facebook has been deleted by Facebook. So thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg. And if you guys are interested in my real estate team, the investment side, I have an application on my Instagram in the link tree. If you're interested in the traditional side, go to jointeambc.com. And lastly, I also have Modern Success, my coaching program. Shout out to them. That's my family. We have our next coaching event March 12th in Miami Beach at a cool venue that I got, a rooftop. We have the whole floor to ourselves. It's going to be really cool. If you're interested in learning more, go to the link in my Instagram, or you can go sign up at briancasella.com. All right, let's jump into this episode. I wanted to talk today about spontaneity, give you some examples of what I'm doing and the importance of this, okay? You lose your zest for life if you have no spontaneity, right? If every single thing you do is calculated, okay? Every single thing, you know exactly what's going to happen. You start to not only get comfortable and fall into this predictable rhythm as a human being, but you start losing. And this is the most important part, because there is the aspect of discipline and doing what you're supposed to do, because it builds and it progresses you, right? And progress is one of those fuels and fires for a human being, right? But when you're totally aware of everything and there's never anything new, right? Like you don't change your workouts, you know, your work routine is exactly the same every time. Eventually you get to a point where you stop being satisfied and happy and fulfilled with life, right? And that's a bridge that you never want to cross. Many of us have crossed that at some point. That's where we took a pivot in our careers. That's where we decided to make a life-changing decision, like, you know, losing weight, stopping, you know, drugs, whatever, right? We have a million where finally that repetition that you were doing in these cases was detrimental to your health or detrimental to your progress or detrimental to your existence as a human being. And you said, I'm going to make a change, right? So the spontaneous aspect, it also simultaneously, and this is the key, man. This is the key. One thing you need to learn as a human being, I don't know if I've really ever talked about this before, right? But it is a key, is you need to learn to forfeit this feeling all the time of having to be 100% in control of everything. Okay. You will suffer tremendously. And a lot of people have that inside of themselves right now, but they won't admit it because they can't see it. But you do. You want to control everything, everyone. If something outside of this control mechanism that you've created happens, you flip out, you freak out, you feel powerless. Okay. We can control our response. The majority of the time, we can't control what's going to happen because the majority of factors dictating our lives is outside of our control, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of things, right? COVID, that's not in our control. I don't give a fuck what level you're at. All right. But if you have this need to be in control all the time, that's going to mess with you, man. And spontaneity, the beauty of it is it's simultaneously, without you having to do anything, you're living by the code of the universe, demonstrating that you're okay not being in control by being spontaneous. Think about that for a second. By the act of being spontaneous, right? And I'm even going to look up the definition for you so we can all be on the same page. You know, that way we don't get mixed up. Performed or occurring as a result of a sudden inner impulse or inclination and without premeditation or external stimulus. Another one, having an open, natural, and uninhibited manner. Another one, occurring without apparent external cause. Okay. So part of that too is pretty cool because it's not being influenced by an external cause, meaning that's coming internally. So spontaneity, if you really look at the definition, and I was going to talk about this, so I'm glad the definition brought it up. It's internal. It comes from you. You can't be spontaneous if someone else offers it or says it. You might be doing something adventurous, but it's not spontaneous, right? Uninhibited. Isn't that cool? How many of us are inhibited tremendously? We stop ourselves. Why do people like drinking? It lowers your inhibitions. Okay. We say that a drunk man's actions are a sober man's thoughts, or a drunk man's words are a sober man's thoughts, right? What is it, right? Part of that is control. Part of that is, criticism and judgment from the outside. There's so many other factors we've talked about that lead into a portion of that definition that you just read. But we got to stop for a second. It comes internally, but it allows you to let go, dude, which is what you have to do. I totally agree, right? Because this doesn't go against the fact that you have to be disciplined and have control, right? And have your routines and rituals, because rituals, all they really are, let's get away from the word for a second, because that's a charged word for a lot of people. It's just consistent actions that you do repeatedly. That's all that rituals are, if you really, really think about it, right? Sorry, I'm thirsty. I'm going to stop and drink for a second. That's all it really is, right? So spontaneity merged with this extreme level of discipline keeps you fresh, man. I haven't really told too many people, but over the last 2 weeks here in Florida, I got my motorcycle endorsement. And today is what? Today is Wednesday, right? Yeah, I bought a motorcycle yesterday. I don't think my parents listen to the podcast, so we're in the clear. I don't want to tell them yet, right? Because there's a history with motorcycles in my family, and let's just say they wouldn't take the news too well. And man, this is totally spontaneous for me to suddenly do the classes and then buy a motorcycle. Now, yeah, you could say it's like a desire. I've been wanting to do it for a while, right? And it's kind of was floating around in my mind, but it was never premeditated. It wasn't, I'm going to go to Florida, I'm going to do this in 6 months. It was more me just being like, hey, I want to do it. And I did it. And man, it was cool to do it. Now, the beauty is this one happened to be tied to finances, because obviously I had to have the free time to do the course, the endorsement, which is almost 2 full days here in Miami. And then I had to have the funds to be able to buy the bike that I wanted. So that made it easier having the funds. I could have done it without being in the financial position that I'm in. But hey, right? I wanted to do it and I did it. Okay. Now, before getting into too many other details, I literally just got off the phone right now before this podcast, and I sold my Porsche, the 2016 911 GT3 RS, right? Very spontaneous. Out of nowhere, boom, I sell it. Now, those two are around cars. We're going to discuss more. But these are two very unplanned, kind of spur of the moment decisions that I made. I employ this all the time. You sparking up conversations with people in the street when you don't normally do that is you being spontaneous. You going out with, let's say, your significant other and then doing something you don't normally do is spontaneous. You taking an action different than what you normally take in particular moments in your day and your routines, right? Like, let's say I normally go for a walk in a park. I'm going to go for a walk on the beach. And you just decide when you get in your car, when you're on your way. Technically, that's spontaneous because you didn't plan it. You're just like, fuck it, I'm going to go here. And you do it, right? Now, remember, this comes internally. That's the beauty of this. And it keeps things fresh. And you never know what's going to happen. And the best part about it, before we even get into more examples, is every time I do something like that, it seems like opportunity comes knocking. I bump into somebody that I wouldn't have bumped into, right? I end up making a connection or having a conversation because I put myself in that place, right? Or I get this great new idea that suddenly just pops up in my mind, and I stop and I write it down. Or if I don't have like a pen and pencil, I put it in my phone. It's like this moment of random inspiration, right? Stuff like that always happens when I do this shit too, when I do the spontaneous stuff. So it's almost like there's like some power in the universe saying, deviate from the path for a second, right? And the art and in the word and in the name of spontaneity. And I'm going to reward you for it, because every time I've done it, it's been a reward. Now, this is not to be mixed up with you being lazy or something else. This is different, right? This is different because every example I gave you has nothing to do with laziness. Being spontaneous isn't skipping the gym because you don't feel like it and staying at home. That's not spontaneous, right? Whoa, it was spontaneous. I decided to stay home, which is different. No, dude, we have to use common sense here. That's not spontaneity. Hopefully you got a good laugh out of that, because I know people who would try to scheme and devise and say, no, it's being spontaneous because I'm supposed to be at the gym, right? Definitely don't want to do that. But yeah, the reward aspect of it, man. Also, you try something new when you do it too, in many cases, because you're deviating from that premeditated, predetermined path. And now let's say you've always walked in the park or the forest and you loved it. Now you go walk on the beach. Maybe there's something about the beach that makes you come back, right? Maybe you do end up enjoying it more, or you find something there, right? You bump into somebody, you see a particular store, right? Or some opportunity comes up where now you add something else to your game and your life that you normally wouldn't have added unless you made that change at that day, at that time, in that particular moment, right? So additionally, when you, and this is where you have to pay attention, you become less aware when you repeat things over and over, right? Your heightened awareness goes away. You start missing particular things. You're not so much in the moment anymore. It's just kind of a blur. Whenever you do these spontaneous things, it brings you back, if you're having issues with that, especially, to like being in the moment and being aware, right? Like you're not daydreaming, you're not floating. Think about all the times that you drive. That's a great example. You've been driving for so long, if you listen to me and you're an adult, that you don't remember your drives. You have no idea. You go from point A to point B and you probably miss 99% of the stuff. If you do something spontaneous, you're going to be a lot more aware. You're going to spot more things in the environment, right? Your sensory acuity is going to be a lot more sharp. It's going to be different because you're doing something new. So your mind's like, oh, this is pleasant. This is something new. I haven't seen this or experienced this before. Because whenever you get in the routine, like driving all the time, there could probably be landmarks that I point out that you wouldn't even notice, and you've driven by them a million times, right? Because it's become so mundane for you to repeat this activity over and over that you don't pay any mind or attention to it anymore. So spontaneity is something we have to keep in mind, but at the same time, based on the definition, and again, I'll read it again for you: performed or occurring as a result of a sudden inner impulse or inclination and without premeditation or external stimulus. At the same time, right, we can't plan to be spontaneous. It's not like you open up your calendar and you're like, hey, Monday's at 8 p.m. I'm going to be spontaneous. It's something that you put in your mind, but think for a second, right? And if anything, what I would describe it as, right? And again, I'm not the end all be all when it comes to these definitions. Now, when we talk about spontaneity, this would probably be categorized more under my opinion and my experience versus telling you this is factual information, right? I would say this: as you're living, moments occur, decisions are made, thoughts pop up. That's when you can employ this. The next time you're on your way to a certain place, right? Maybe you go to the same restaurant every day. Try something new. When you're on your way there, think, or right before, even though you didn't plan it, look up other stuff close by. Hey, you know what? I'm going to try this place. That's spontaneous. Or show up to the place that you go to and then walk across the street and go there. That's spontaneous. Go for a walk when normally you drive everywhere, right? Normally you drive to the store and it's close. It's like a mile or two. How about you walk one time? That's being spontaneous. But don't decide it until that day when you do it. Don't say, Wednesday, I'm going to do it. Wait for Wednesday to come or whatever day. And when you feel like it, be like, you know what? I have energy today. I'm just going to fucking walk and do it and see what happens. Pay attention. You never know. You never know what can come from something like that. Because I can tell you some of my best experiences, wildest, like random connections, insights, ideas have come from this thing of being spontaneous. It's crazy. It's crazy. But at the same time, if you try to define it too much, or we try to, in quotes, plan it, you kill it and it's not spontaneity anymore. So it's one of those things that you have to become more in tune with your intuition, right? Those inclinations, like it talks about in the definition, and be more mindful. But at the same time, you can't put pen to paper and say, I'm going to be spontaneous every Saturday at 10 a.m., right? Because that's not the way it works, okay? So this is a short one for you guys. I'll end it here. It's just something to keep in mind more and open yourself up to. That way, as you're experiencing life, you know, especially if you're experiencing with other people, this is something you can throw in that really makes things cool and makes things interesting and keeps life fresh, man. And that's what I want. All right. That's it for this one, guys. All the links, check them out. We'll see you on the next episode. Peace.